Welcome back after the break. Sujeet, we actually have a very hard-hitting story this week from Sikh community. Recently, actually this week, large number of Sikh community gathered outside United Nations headquarters protesting against the death penalty of Professor Devinder Singh Pullar. He's the same guy who has been in prison for 17 years, which is like equal to life imprisonment. And now he actually applied for mercy petition 8 years ago. And the Indian government actually took 8 years to answer that mercy petition. And what he gets now is death penalty. I think it's horrible. And the thing is that he's not even mentally stable at this point. So giving death penalty to a person who's not even mentally stable, I think that is not only against Indian law or, a law in America. I think that is against universal law. How can you, give death penalty to someone who's not even mentally stable? What do you say about that, Sujeet?
Well, Fairy, I just want to give a background on Devinder Singh Pullar.
Yes.
He's a convict he was a part of the Khalistan movement in India in the 80s. He's a convict on death row. He was found guilty of killing 9 bystanders in a 1993 car bombing, which was intended to kill Maninder Singh Bitta, who was, he was a big critic of the Khalistani, protest movement. And he was finally, Pullar was sentenced to death by hanging. He's also a suspect in 2 other, deadly terrorist attacks in India. Bitta actually escaped that attack on his life, where, finally Pullar was, convicted of and was sentenced to death by hanging. But 9 people did die in those attacks. And, Bitta was also a target earlier in 1992, bombing in Amritsar. And finally what happened was after the bombing, Pullar fled to Germany. And,
right.
He sought political asylum there.
Right.
But the German government actually, rejected his asylum petition and extradited him back to India. And finally, so Germany also, has protested. There has been protests against Pullar's, death sentence in several countries, including in the US and Canada and Germany. And also there have been a mass movement comprising a lot of the Sikh community who said that the death sentence should be commuted and it should be let free.
They've actually even submitted a memorandum to United Nations. And what do you think? How will they, convince India not to give Pullar the death penalty? What do you think that United Nations is going to do next after receiving the memorandum?
Well, the Gurpad Singh Pannoon, he is the legal advisor for Sikhs for Justice, and
Correct.
He was the one who actually led this protest outside the United Nations in New York City. And he said that the group had written to Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and to remind him that the UN General Assembly had passed a resolution that called on nations to put a moratorium on the death penalty. But the Secretary General's office says that they have yet to receive any communication from Pannoon and his group. So, it's not sure even if they do receive the, petition, how, if they would be able to prevail upon the Indian government to put a stop to Pullar's life, because after all he was convicted, of killing 9 people in those bombings.
And some people actually, Sujeet, also believe that he's innocent because, the confession that, he made, it is believed that, he was tortured to make that confession. And matter of fact, there were like 133 witnesses of the crime and not even one witness recognizes him as the terrorist. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, there's a lot of controversy about Pullar's, especially the Sikhs who feel aggrieved after the 1984, riots that took place in India. A lot of them, fled India after those riots, and a lot of them emigrated to the US and Canada and several other European nations. And the Khalistan movement never really died down in some countries.
Right.
But as far as Pullar's, his petition was denied by President Pratibha Patil, and he has been trying to get a mercy petition for quite a while. Several individuals have actually filed petitions on his behalf, but President Pratibha Patil actually on May 27th rejected his mercy petition, which was pending since January 14th of 2003. and the Union Home Ministry had given final recommendations on Buller's plea on August 9th of 2005. So he's been in jail for a long time, while the question also arises as to why should a person be in jail for such a long time even if he's to be executed. In India also there have been a lot of protests to release Buller,
right.
Not only in the outside, and the Shromani Gurudwara Prabandha Committee, the SGPC, sent a petition out to have him released, and as well as the Danga Period Welfare Society of Punjab have said that they will hold a demonstration for him. And the organization said that we will march from Bangla Sahib Gurdwara to the Rashtrapati Bhavan with 25,000 people. So that's much more than the 100 odd people who converged outside of the UN. So there is a big movement there to release Buller, but I sincerely doubt that he will be released, because that will be just adding fuel to the old flame of the Khalistan movement all over again and the controversy arising.
But Sujeet, the question over here is, I mean, you said that there are very, very rare chances that it's going to happen, but how are they going to give death penalty to someone who's not even mentally stable? I mean, don't you think it's inhumane? How can you?
Right, but this is, remember that what happened during those horrible times in Punjab in the 80s, the Indian government and the people of India don't really want that to happen anytime ever again in the country. So Buller is also a case where he's going to be made an example of what really happens to people who do, perpetrate crimes against India and the Indian people. And I think
is not even proven that he did, because like I said,
well, that's for the courts to decide, and the courts have decided that Buller was guilty of those, the bombing which took 9 places.
So many people are protesting against it. You think that Indian government is actually going to look over the case again?
Well, I don't think they will look over the case again, because the sentence has already been passed and the President Pratibha Patil has already rejected a mercy petition. But I do believe that what can happen is that the Indian government might be forced to take cognizance of the fact that a lot of the the perpetrators of the Sikh the violence against the Sikh community that took place in 1984, those people should be brought to justice. There's been a long-standing demand by the Sikh community that a lot of the leaders, the political leaders in India who were associated with those crimes, and there have been a lot of evidence, a lot of witnesses have stepped forward, they should be held equally responsible, like people like Devinder Singh Buller, and they should also be punished for the crimes that they committed.
So I think that's one of the main reasons of the rage and anger among Sikh community, Well, moving on to our next story. Out of all these, hard-hitting story, finally we have something interesting. The first women Indian American governor, Nikki Haley of South Carolina, is actually writing a memoir about a fascinating political journey. And it is expected to hit the stands by January 2012. Isn't that interesting?
Well, it is, because the timing, what a better timing than a January of 2012, the same year as the elections.
Correct.
Haley's memoir, it's called "Can't Is Not an Option: My Story," and the Sentinel imprint of Penguin Group has got the rights to that. But Haley is one of those fast-rising Republican stars, who is touted as a potential vice presidential nominee also. She could be, even in the 2012 elections. And, remember that Governor Sarah Palin has brought out a memoir which did extremely well. Now comes Nikki Haley's memoir, which has potential to not only become a bestseller in the US and Canada, because she is, after all, of Punjabi origin, but also it's going to be, I think, a bestseller in India, because, she is not only the first Indian American, she's also the first Asian American, and also the first Asian American of woman. A woman to become Punjabi, governor. Governor Bobby Jindal of Louisiana also is a very interesting story, and but I think Nikki Haley's story is something we should all be eagerly looking forward to, because I really want to know how, because her family,
her political journey was so interesting.
Absolutely, and her family, they started a business when they first came down to South Carolina. They faced a lot of racial intimidation, because there were not many people of Indian origin in those parts, and Nikki Haley growing up, but she countered everything, and finally look where she is.
Right. Well, Sujeet, it's time to take a break, but before that, why don't you tell us about your exclusive interview that you just, were talking about with me?
Yeah, well, Fairy, this is something, we have been talking about in the last few episodes. The IRS has given a voluntary disclosure initiative to all the immigrants. It's not just the Indian American community, but it's for all immigrants in this country. Anybody who is a legal resident, who is he can be American, he or she could be an American citizen, a green card holder, or anybody even on a H-1B visa, they have to do a voluntary disclosure of all their assets and bank deposits outside of the US. So I had a chance to sit down with a couple of the top two experts, tax experts in this country, Wayne Holton and Anand Madhusudanan. They work for Citrin Cooperman, which is a tax consulting firm in New York and New Jersey. And I wanted to find out because HSBC Bank, who has at least 9,000 account holders who are of NRI origin, and they only like 2,000 people have stepped forward. And these 9,000 account holders, between them, have a total asset of more than $400 million in offshore accounts. So, it's not just a question of penalties here, it's a question of prosecution. Two people of HSBC clients have already pleaded guilty to offshore, hiding offshore accounts from US tax authorities. And another one has been convicted to a lengthy jail term. So I wanted to ask Wayne and Anand as to where this is all going, and I picked their brains.
Interesting. Well, friends, it's time for a short break, but you don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.